Hello viewers, Super GT here. Radical have lent me one of their cars. I'm going to be driving an SR1. This is Donington Park. Yes, Donington Park. I've never been here before, so there's a lot to learn. I have driver coach Gordie Mutch. Mr. Gordie, how's it going? Gonna make me good? Gonna make me fast?
Yeah mate, I don't know why Radical thought it was a good idea to put you in a car.
Currently getting the seat fit, so they poured some liquid in the back of the seat. So I've got to sit, how long have I got to sit here for? About
15 minutes.
About 15 minutes I've got to sit here for. With the seats fitting complete and the car ready to go, it was nearing my first time on the track, and as you can see, the track was fairly damp. It was wet and dry. It was kind of complicated, and that wouldn't make for an easy first session. Then, after learning the rather intricate starting procedure in the car, it was time to pull away out of the pit lane and head out onto the track for the very first time. And this is where we uncovered our first issue. After showing the marshal my wristband to allow me onto the circuit, we can pause it here because this is the last you'll see of the footage, and as a content creator, is a bit of a problem when the camera doesn't connect properly. Alright, a bit of a disaster, guys, because the camera basically didn't work, so I have to go and fix that. You'll just have to trust me that I was, setting world record pace.
It's such a shame that the camera wasn't running. You lunged the guy into turn 1, barreled over him, landed on 4 wheels, and then set the world record.
Honestly, you ain't lying. It happened. With the track conditions slowly improving, I thought I'd send out Gordie to go and see what he can do in the car. Okay, Gordie's going to go out now, set a bit of a reference lap for me so I can learn from him. And I think this was a really good idea to have a professional driver coach. He did a couple of laps, came in, and then it was my turn to give it a proper go. And by now, the track conditions were fairly dry, showing the marshal once again the wristband. And finally, here we go then, onto the track for the first time. Well, the second time, but the first time in the video that you can actually see. Around Donington Park. Now, as I said earlier, this is not a track I've done before, so there's a fair amount of learning for me to do. Trying to get used to the car, trying to get used to the circuit, and it's down here, down the Craner curves. You've got to be rather brave and really committed in this type of car. Now this car, the Radical SR1, it does have wings, it has a fair amount of downforce, of course, nothing compared to a Formula 1 car, but it's still something that I would have to adjust to and learn over the course of the day, or the few days that I'll be testing the car. Now, as you can see, it's a fairly mixed session. There was some different cars out there. For example, here at Caterham, and that was something you'd have to adjust to. There were a couple of GT3 cars out there, in fact. But there was a fair mix of speeds, and certainly I would have to be looking in my rearview mirrors as well to make sure we didn't get caught up in any silly incidents. Now, this is the national circuit, so coming down here on the back straight, we're going to be turning right through the final chicane, and then back onto the main straight here, as you can see. So that was a rather steady first lap, and as you can see here, just over the course of the session, going past quite a few cars, and then other cars going past me. That was a Radical SR3, so slightly quicker than the SR1 that I'm driving. And then later on, let's take a look through a faster lap on the session. It was really good because there wasn't really any red flags during this session, so it was a very uninterrupted set of laps, which is always very good, especially when you're trying to learn the car. So coming down here, keeping the car flat out through the left of the Craner curves, and then the old hairpin, a very difficult corner to get right, high speed up the hill. Crucial that you get a good exit here as you ascend. Yeah, and I wasn't quite sure which side the Caterham was going to go, but of course, just making sure we don't go into the back of him and have a silly accident. The right of McLean's here at the top of the hill, quite a tricky corner to get right. Then down the back straight, just really trying to push this braking point as far back as possible, near enough to the end of the building on the left, braking perhaps a little bit before on this occasion, and then carrying as much speed through the final chicane as I realistically dare to do so. And then that was the end of that lap, and you know what, I was getting slowly used to the car and just becoming a bit more brave with pushing it a bit deeper into the corners, braking as late as I dare. And at the beginning it felt as though that was as late as I wanted to go, but I'm sure there'll be much more improvement to be made. But eventually, after about 25 minutes of running, it was time to bring the car back in and have a talk to Gordie about how I did. So Gordie did a reference lap of a 112. I did a 112.9 twice. I think Gordie can go quicker, I can go quicker. Getting to grips with the car, and I think there's just a couple of things we can work on.
We're braking a bit too hard on the way into the corner. We want to go into the corner lighter and faster. We just need to drive faster, mate.
Yeah, it's quite a simple thing really, isn't it? Just drive faster. I think I wasn't revving out the engine fully, so there's that. Wrong gears at a couple of corners as well. Braking a bit too hard. Just need to move everything a bit further back in the corner. So just like the second session, I let Gordie go out once again at the beginning just to see what he could do. This time he was interrupted by some wet weather. A very rude rain cloud had dispersed some water on these two corners, McLean's and Coppice, at the far end of the circuit, where the rest of the track was still dry. So he only did 2 laps, brought the car in, and then it was my turn. There was a red flag for 5 or 10 minutes, so there was that. But once that was cleared, it was my turn to go out onto the circuit, and admittedly I was a little bit tentative, it would be fair to say, into McLean's, as you can see here. Not taking the fastest line, just a little bit wary of the damp surface, and of course that I've been lent the car and I don't want to do any damage to it. So there is that. So you can see just how sketchy it is through Coppice, that long right-hander. Up behind an SR3, we're both having a bit of a torrid time through that corner, to be honest. But a bit later on in the session, just trying to push a bit more, trying to be a bit more brave and just get used to that feeling of the car oversteering and dealing with that oversteer. Going past a 4KA here, so once again, quite a mix of vehicles on the circuit, but thankfully for a first day on the track it wasn't too busy. I spoke to a lot of the guys at the circuit and they were saying that actually it's very rare that you get a day where there's not that many cars. There's probably less than 10 cars on the track at some point, so it was actually really not that busy at all, which was quite good. This Radical here letting me go through, giving him a little thank you wave on the way through. Then just trying to carry as much speed as we can into the chicane through turn 1 as well, and getting slowly better with that. Of course, most of the track was dry, so we could still learn from most of the circuit. So through McLean's I was a lot quicker later on in the session. This is lap 11 now, and likewise for Coppice, just trying to brake a bit later, carry the speed in, perhaps overslowing it still, but certainly faster than I was in the early stages of this session and the previous sessions. Down the back straight, main consideration here is the braking point, and then just lifting off the brake at the correct time to really carry the speed through the chicane. Crucial that you do that because you're leading onto the main straight. So you want to carry as much speed through there as you realistically can. A couple of moments with some slower cars here, so couldn't quite carry as much speed as I would have liked there. But eventually we got the checkered flag. Ultimately it was 14 laps of uninterrupted running, so once again a healthy amount of laps behind the wheel. What about that session, Gordie?
Quicker than what we went before, still being an absolute on the brakes, still braking too heavy.
Yeah, so I've got to be a little bit, got to hustle the car a bit more. That's the main thing. I'm not working it hard enough. Each session so far has been better, so we're going in the right direction. Gordie then showed me the telemetry data, a comparison between himself and my best lap, and just showing me where I could carry more speed into the corners and where I can improve. The weather was slowly turning for the worse, so I wanted to make sure I got out back onto the track before the rain came in. Traditional British weather really, where you can't really predict it too well. You see that the Lamborghini GT3 car going through turn 1, it was quite cool to share the circuit with a car like that. But eventually into this session you can see the rain was coming down, and as we come through here you can see a lightning bolt in the distance, which was a pretty cool shot, but I knew that it was going to get very, very wet. And just as I was getting quicker in this session, the rain came down, and you see there a car up in front going straight on at the final chicane. I felt like this was a good opportunity to practice some car control, even if I wasn't going to go any quicker because of obviously the wet weather. But coming down here, I was about to have a bit of an incident as you can see, just the car swapping ends through the old hairpin, just got a little bit over eager on the power, and then before you know it, you're facing the wrong way. So there we've had it, our first spin in the Radical. Luckily no damage done. We can continue and bring the car back round. And I wanted to just carry on as long as possible. You know, it's quite good to practice the car control. But then eventually, after going straight on at the final chicane, the camera cut a little bit, but after going straight on, I thought, this is probably getting a little bit dangerous now. I don't want to write off the car. I don't want to write myself off. So let's bring it back in and make sure we don't do any damage. Okay guys, that was the final session. It was going well. We were getting quicker towards the low 12s, but then it started raining. That spin was a bit ropey, but it was all good because I think the pace was coming to me. We were getting quicker and there's more to come.
Really, really good day today. I mean, we've shaved off a lot of time. We're in a really good position for next week's test.
Solid day one, I think. We progressed each session, which was good. Faster and faster and faster. But there's more pace to come. So end of day one. Let's go to day 2. Now this is the first time driving the international circuit, so this time we've got a bit of a longer track to do. It's a busier day, so there'll be lots of GT3 cars. We're pulling a load of red flags. Okay, so for my first session on the international or GP circuit, I had to bed in the brakes. You can see there on the steering wheel it says new pads. So I couldn't really push the car too much. I needed to brake a lot earlier and not as hard, just to make sure the brakes get bedded in nicely. But this was a good opportunity just to do a bit of reconnaissance and just take a look at the GP. So coming down the back straight, instead of going right-left, you'd be approaching from the right and then you'll be going left-right, as you can see here. So we got this different chicane instead. And then this leads into 2 hairpins. First of which the Melbourne hairpin. You go over this crest and you have a very big braking zone downhill into this hairpin, the first hairpin, and then you rise back up the hill towards the final corner of the second hairpin. Now this is obviously the new part of the track that I would have to learn, and while simultaneously getting better at all of the other part of the track that I've already done. Now this session kind of went by, there wasn't too much to report. There was this McLaren that went through. It was pretty cool, again, sharing the track with GT3 cars, and eventually you see on the left there was a stricken car. So as per usual, there was a red flag, we had to bring the car in. So yeah, we got Gordie out now. He's going to do some laps for me, show me how to do it properly, and then I'm out after him.
Alright!
Nothing but world records, please. Also, my best fans are here this weekend, as you can see, look. Incredible. Now, I haven't actually shown you too much of Gordie's footage up to this point, but we can do that right now. So, of course, Gordie, for those that don't know, he is a professional racing driver. He's actually Jimmy Broadbent's teammate in the Praga Cup this year. And very, very accomplished guy, very, very fast. Absolutely alien pace, and it's really good to have a driver like that in the car, so you can have the comparison and the advice, of course, and the video footage like we are watching right now. And the first thing that strikes me about watching Gordie drive is just how much he is pushing and hustling the car, making it work. It might look a little bit scruffy, and I think it was to an extent, but it's certainly a lot quicker than anything I was doing. He was typically about a second or a second and a half faster than what I was doing, and to be honest, it wasn't too bad on my part, given that it was my first couple of days in the car, so I wasn't too displeased with that. But it is definitely a very useful tool to have a driver of this caliber in the car, someone that you can learn from. And eventually he was pointed to the left, meaning he was going to bring the car in, as he did. It was then my turn to get in and try to emulate everything that he just did, which is a lot easier said than done, it must be said. So, as we head out onto the track, it's really good to be able to start the day, with a hit the ground running is the phrase I'm trying to say. But this session didn't really go that way because there was immediately a red flag after about 5 seconds. But after the track was cleared, I found myself up behind a fellow SR1 driver, which was quite useful actually, because I think in motorsport you do need reference points. You need a reference in front of you, a comparison, so you know how quick you're going. You can see what's possible on the circuit immediately in front of you. So I felt like this was actually a very useful way to learn. And of course you need to learn what it feels like to be close to other cars rather than going around on your own the whole time, because of course when it comes to the racing you're going to be very close to all the other cars. So this was a very useful couple of laps here following the other driver. You can see here there's a Ford GT40 on the circuit, which was pretty cool. And it was, again, awesome to share the circuit with such a car like that. But I don't think they were pushing it too much. And you see in the middle distance, just trying to keep up with these cars in front, trying to carry a bit more speed through McLean's and Coppice. And I think these were probably my two weakest corners on the track, because I was just slowing the car down too much when the car could actually go quite a lot quicker. But eventually the session was over. We bring the car back in, taking a look at the telemetry, and it was quite clear what I was doing. I just wasn't releasing the brake quickly enough. We were doing quite a lot of learning here, lots of note taking, just to make sure that I was really getting all of the valuable points into my head. What do I need to do? What am I doing wrong?
Not carrying enough speed into the corners.
Yeah.
We're braking a little bit too hard. We're just scrubbing off the speed and getting on the power too early, which is just like kind of scrubbing. We're just losing time on the exits.
Bearing Gordie's advice in mind, we go out for the next session, just trying to carry more speed through the corner. And I spoke briefly about the aerodynamic grip of the car. It can go through the corner quicker than I believe, but it's quite a tricky thing to convince yourself of when you're going into a corner at 120 miles an hour. Now this is my fastest lap of the day. So as we ride on board, going past the MX-5 here, we're not going to lose too much time going past them. Through the Craner curves, flat out through there, keep the car to the left, getting on the brakes, turning in nice and early. Don't quite meet the apex there, but carry some decent-ish speed on the way up the hill. Get the car over to the right, trying to apex quite late on this entry to McLean's. Here, then release the brake, and not releasing it as perhaps early as I could, but still carrying a decent amount of speed through. How about Coppice up the hill, on the brakes, back off it again, meeting the apex. Bit of oversteer, but on the power quite early, so not an awful run. Could definitely be a bit quicker here as we then head down towards the chicane. Looking for this second marker board on the right. There it is, braking just before it. Off the brakes, carry the speed through. A bit of oversteer, but carrying an okay amount of speed through. Then looking for the second board on the left, which is there, braking just before it. Coasting the car in, off the brakes, let the car rotate, and then back on the power. A little bit of oversteer on the exit, but not too bad as we head towards the final turn. This one's quite tricky to see, as it's kind of unsighted over this mini crest as you go in, and I didn't really take it too well, and I got a really bad shift there as well on the exit of the corner. But it's going to be a 36.5, which is my fastest lap of the day. Now we go from a good moment to a bad moment. But you're not really pushing if you're not crashing. So as we head down towards the old hairpin, I have this little moment coming up here, because I go in a little bit too hot and then just get on the power a little bit too early, and then boom. Almost identical to the crash we had. Bit of dust in the face, which wasn't pleasant. But thankfully we didn't collide with anything. We managed to keep the car going, and we eventually bring it back into the pit lane. So no damage done, which is good. Okay guys, that's the end of day 2. And I can tell you it's really physical out there. It might not come through in the video, but you know, when you're going down that back straight especially, the wind is just horrific. So there's lots of physicality out there. I think that's probably why I made that mistake on that final stint. But there was good progress there. Yeah, how's that, viewers?
Drink on. He's not interested. He's had enough.
Well, that's my driver coach gone. I'm all on my own now, guys. Thankfully, Gordie didn't totally disown me, because he took me out on a very romantic track walk. And this is actually a very, very good way to learn the circuit, more than you'd expect. This is crucial information here. This is the sensor. There's lots of these on the outside of each corner, most of the corners anyway.
That,
Don't touch them or you get a penalty.
that pole right there is the camera that takes pictures of you when you do it. See that pole right
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
The camera on top of it.
Yeah. Get him. So, yeah, this is the track walk, and this is... It's a good job they have that arrow there, because, you know, I wouldn't know which way to go if not for that. I was turning left until I saw that. What's really interesting about the track, walking it, is just how sticky these curbs are. You probably can't hear it, but... It's sticky, it's sticky. It is it's an incredible view here, guys. I'm really getting quite emotional on this track walk. Just subscribe for more beautiful sunsets. Morning. Yep. On the third and final day of testing, I was granted a visor cam, as you can see, and this brings about a very unique perspective on what it's like to drive this car around this circuit. Now, I think this much better shows off the sheer ferocity, the noise and the energy that you feel in the car when you drive around this circuit. Now, I want to leave you with this on board for a couple of laps just to truly appreciate and enjoy what it's like to drive a Radical SR1 around Donington Park. So after overtaking that blue car, there was a couple of laps before I caught up with this next group, and my goodness, this session was so fun. I was really enjoying myself out there. Catching up with this next couple of cars, let's see how we can go about trying to overtake them as we head up towards McLean's. Now often if one car goes for a move, you kind of tuck towards the inside and follow them through, so the car on the outside doesn't really have a choice. Getting very close to the rear bumper of the car in front here, not quite close enough to go for this move up the hill into Coppice, so we're going to play it nice and patient here, try and get a good exit instead, down the back straight towards the chicane, tucking into the slipstream of both the cars in front, and you definitely do notice a difference when you are behind another car. Now the grey car 2 in front does brake quite early, and I almost go into the back of the black car here, but thankfully don't. Just try to get a good exit, don't quite achieve that. But this is where we have a very close call. Coming down in towards the Melbourne hairpin, you see the grey car brakes very early, goes quite wide. We're going to try to square off the corner, get a good exit as we do. And then this is where we almost do some big damage to the car. As you see, look at the car in front. He has a bit of a moment, locks up, spins the car, and I'm very, very close to going straight into them. Take a look at that again, and thankfully I think at the last moment I just released the brake, so the car turned to the left, and I think it looks a little bit closer on this onboard camera. You see there just how close it was to disaster. Thankfully nothing else really happened in that session, so we brought the car in. That felt really good, mate. Yeah
Good.
a 36.7, but I f***ed up like both hairpins.
That's fine. Just drive it back to the awning, yeah? Good.
Yeah, happy with that, mate. Just got out of the car. Good first session. There's so many radicals, which is really good actually, because I can get in the mix, see how quick I am compared to the other drivers. And to be fair, I felt pretty good there, going past quite a few cars. Near enough as good as my best lap yesterday, but with 2 massive mistakes. That's the brake into the first hairpin. I'm still leaving my foot on the throttle slightly, so I need to stop doing that. Okay, it was time to jump into our last couple of sessions in the car before we'd eventually be doing our first ever race in the Radical. Now, we've had 3 days of testing, which is of course very generous from Radical, and of course we have to give them a massive thanks for allowing me to have the time in the car. And you know, I was having so much fun, but also learning a lot, which is the main thing. And here there were quite a lot of cars that I was faster than, and that was good. That was a good sign going into the race that I wasn't going to be the slowest. But at the same time, there were cars that were quicker than me, and you know, that was fair enough. I knew that that was going to be the case, and whenever they went past I just tried to sit behind them and learn as much as possible. I was going to be jumping into the race as a new competitor, and this was the final round of the season, so I knew that there were people here who were very experienced, who have been doing the championship for a long time, and therefore I would not be immediately the quickest person ever. So I learned all I could, and I was definitely improving from this point at the end of the 3rd day compared to how I was in the first day. There was a big difference. Now here you can see, unfortunately there was a big difference between my car and this car going past, because it seemed as though my vehicle developed some sort of engine failure, and we didn't know exactly what it was. You might be able to hear that it was quite rattly, and we didn't really know exactly what this fault was. And my car was about 3 or 4 seconds off the pace compared to what I was normally doing. I was doing 36s, but once this fault developed I was doing more like 139s, 140s. So it was a little bit frustrating, but I was just trying to learn as much as I possibly could, even with this issue. But eventually, after 9 laps, we brought the car in, and that was the end of my time in the car. Okay guys, that's the end of the final session and the end of all of my practice. Now that last session was a bit weird because there's definitely some sort of engine issue, some sort of power issue. So I was like 3-4 seconds off every lap, and I could tell every other SR1 was flying past me and there's nothing I could do. So that's something we have to work out before the racing. Catch me in those videos, they're coming up after this one. But yeah, incredible experience. Thank you so much to Radical for letting me drive their car, and join me in the next videos for the races. We'll see how they go.